everyone, and welcome to this week's Wellness Watch. Today's session comes from Season 1, which was originally recorded on our live class platform called Learn It Live. If you have any questions, please be sure to comment below and like and subscribe to this video so you can get more content from the Dancing Herbalist on herbal medicine, health, and wellness. I hope you enjoyed today's session on healthy body flora. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Wellness Watch, where we talk about different wellness practices and herbs and whatever you're paying attention to right now. My name is Jillian Karnick. If you don't know me yet, I run the Dancing Herbalist. I have a Master of Science degree in herbal medicine, and I'm also a nutritionist, certified personal trainer, and exercise as medicine professional through the American College of Sports Medicine. We also have Annabelle Shiver here with us today from Conscious Canary Chronicles. How you doing, Annabelle?
Hi. Hey. So as you said, my name's Annabelle, and I'm the author of the Conscious Canary Chronicle blog. I'm an autist and pharmaceutical injury survivor, and avid plant-based food explorer, and self-practitioner of herbs and different healing modalities.
I'm always glad to have you here, Annabelle, for us to have our conversations. We always come up with some new interesting things that we haven't talked about before.
Yeah, every week I come up with something new to add to what I'm doing in the sense of my own recovery. So it's great. I'm always excited to join in.
So Wellness Watch each week is brought to you from the Dancing Herbalist, and specifically the Dancing Herbalist's Patreon page. If you don't know the Dancing Herbalist, we focus on topical herbal products for joint and muscle pain, as well as skin sensitivities and injuries. I do also offer consultation services for more personal support if you're ever looking for that. We do have a bunch of free offerings as well, including our free and paid classes right through Learn It Live. And if you found this session, you found Learn It Live. So you can find our other classes right through here. We do also have our free newsletter we send out every month with health and wellness tips, in addition to information on our upcoming classes, herbal products, and any other new and interesting things we have going on. You can buy the products from the Dancing Herbalist right at thedancingherbalist.com. And we do also have our Facebook discussion group, the Dancing Herbalist Herbies, which you can see the lovely long link for here, or you can just go to Facebook and search the Dancing Herbalists Herbies. But that's where, if you have any questions after one of our sessions, it's the best place to go to get answers from Annabelle, myself, or one of the other herbal practitioners that are in that session. And if you are new to Wellness Watch, we've been doing this for about a month and a half now, and our March schedule is right here. So this week we're going to be discussing healthy body flora, and it's going to be a good prequel to our discussion next week, which is going to be on healthy bowel movements. We'll then be talking about food testing, so looking at how you determine if a food is good or bad for your own body. And then our last week in March, we're going to be having our session on my first herbs, so herbs that Annabelle and I first started to explore with, and herbs that we think are good ones for you to start exploring with for your first herbs. So, Annabelle, healthy body flora.
I love it. I was just sitting here thinking when we're talking about next week coming up with bowel movements that we generally always talk about poop or something along those lines. So I think
Yep.
a lot of people really identify flora just with the digestive tract, but we have flora all throughout our bodies in different areas. So I think it's an interesting area I've been exploring for a while, the world of microbes. I know you've studied a lot of it too.
Yeah, I've been focusing on them a little bit more the past few months, mostly for writing up blogs for the Dancing Herbalist and looking at different probiotic foods. But for me, for a while, was looking a lot at the microbes of my skin because of my skin issues that I was having. A lot of people thought I might have a fungal infection of my skin, and that's what was leading to all of the rashes that I had. Turns out it was a whole different pharmaceutical issue that I was dealing with, and not a fungal issue, but making sure that I was nourishing the flora of my skin was really important in helping my skin to heal and for the inflammation to really reduce so I wasn't getting the rashes in the first place.
It's really interesting. The skin, I don't think people really identify much with microbes. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not the most heavily populated area we have with microbes because our skin's,
No.
pretty acidic in nature. But it definitely goes to, um, you know, creating different areas of inflammation in the body, the relationship that microbes have. And I think the other common denominator every
Us.
time we talk is balance.
Mm-hmm.
So biggest thing I've been learning in the world of microbes in body flora is the balance of them, and how they're interdependent on one another. And I think a lot of times, for me, when I thought about microbes, I would think about something very negative, like, oh, bacteria or fungus or parasites or things of that nature, but they're not necessarily bad if we have the right balance. And when there's not the right balance is when, disease, disorder, and illness surfaces. So, but it's really hard to identify on the skin, what can trigger something, like with your case. So it
Yeah, I
wasn't a
mean,
fungal infection.
it did take well over 10 years to figure out what was actually wrong with my skin, and I'm still learning new things about my skin. I feel like every year new things show up. I mean, my skin rashes, as you know, have been coming back lately just because of the dish soap that I've been using. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of the dish soaps and hand soaps we have out there are antibacterial. So they're killing off the good bacteria of our skin and leaving way for our skin to become inflamed and get irritated.
Absolutely. I think that is such a big point because I was thinking about this when I was doing a little bit of reading on body flora a little bit ago. And we have the antibacterial use in our soap. I think the mindset is really the same that I had was like, oh, there's bacteria, we need to kill it all. And
Mm-hmm.
so instead of having that mutualistic, type relationship or that communalistic type relationship that we're really meant to have with bacteria, like E. coli is not a bad bacteria, but
Nope.
whenever whenever it takes over, it becomes a bad bacteria and generates a bacterial infection. So I think we are just starting to begin to understand the significance of the role that, things like antibacterial soap are playing in chronic illness.
And I don't think it's just soaps. And I know you know this. I mean, all of the pesticides that are on our foods or that are on the conventionally grown foods, those are doing the exact same thing. Because
Right.
there's a lot that are fungicides, and when we eat them, that's killing the good fungus that's in it on our bodies. So it's the same exact things.
It is. And I like to sort of think of it as a room, that's full of different bacteria, like say bacteria, E. coli. So there's a room full of E. coli, and it's a room that has standing room only. So, okay, there's standing room for 25 E. coli, and that's what makes that room full and functional to capacity but not overflowing, and not having enough in there. So whenever you take one out or two out, you leave an open space. And that's where the pathogens and the parasites start to come in, and they start colonizing that area and turning it all into the bad bacteria, because we've taken out the good bacteria by way of, like you're saying, pesticides, but also by way of nutrition. Our bodies are made up of fungus and viruses and parasites and, bacteria, and they all require a certain type of food in order to do their job, which is keep us functioning. So whenever you take something out and you leave room for the bad, to come in and start taking over, you take away that balance. And that can happen just by way of nutrition. I mean, when we talk about things like soaking grains and things of that nature, whenever you're blocking absorption in your body of key essential trace minerals and nutrients, our cells don't get what they need, and they start having open spots, and that's how we start getting the invasion.
Yeah, just so you're saying this, when something gets killed off, whatever's available will take its place. And this is exactly why when people are taking antibiotics, they tend to stay sicker longer if they don't actually take probiotics at the same time and rotate through them to actually recolonize their bodies as they're killing off the bad things to try to recolonize with the good things.
Right. Yeah, you
Not that I think
definitely.
we should be taking antibiotics, but
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you're in that position, and antibiotics have a role in medicine, they do. If
mhm,
you have a pathogenic infection that you cannot treat naturally, which I feel like you primarily, if you get things, and you take care of things initially, you're not going to get bad off enough to need antibiotics. But if you do, get to that point, that's something that I don't think people get a lot of information on whenever they get
mhm,
prescribed antibiotics. Being a pharmaceutical injury survivor from antibiotics, being one of those, not one time when it was administered was there any type of counsel on, like, maybe you need to eat this type of food, or make sure you're having something fermented or what have you, to keep that balance of the gut bacteria. And then, if we do end up taking things that clean out that bacteria, and we repopulate it with bad bacteria in general, which most people, on the standard American diet have a lot of sugar consumption, a lot of starch and carbohydrate consumption. And so they're basically then just feeding these bacteria and fungi. And I think that's how things like candida and et cetera get out of control.
mhm.
So, I mean, candida is a necessary part of our body. We are supposed to have candida in our body, but we're supposed to have candida at a certain amount. So, and then the other thing I was thinking about is like with the skin, a lot of times I think whenever you do get fungal infections, it's in the areas that are more moist. That explains a lot of like jock itch, or, female skin infections in the groin, or athlete's foot, things of that
Mhm.
nature. And usually, I mean, what is the common treatment that you've experienced with those?
You mean conventional treatment or alternative treatment?
Yeah. What normally do they do conventional treatment wise? Isn't it a steroid type treatment?
Yeah, usually it would be a steroid cream, um, or antifungal creams, because usually skin issues tend to be fungal issues rather than bacterial issues, I think.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think antifungals they kill things off, but we don't have any good way to recolonize with goods. There's no like topical pro-fungal creams out there. They just don't exist.
No,
I've
there's
never
really
heard of such
not.
a thing.
Well, and what I really feel like happens with things like steroids in particular, and I think you and I have discussed this before, is the role of steroids, at least synthetically, is just suppress symptoms. And so you can treat, and that was my experience because I used to have a lot of fungal infections on the skin. And so I would treat with steroid creams, and it would get a little bit better, or it would, not itch or whatever is bad. And but then I would end up back with the same infection, and it just sort of like was the cycle of just, constantly taking some type of topical steroid, which eventually, is going to compromise the immune system.
Yeah, and this is a real big issue with topical steroids these days, that it's not really talked about, and the medical community at large doesn't believe it's happening. But there's a syndrome that I don't know the whole name for it because it's a long name. But it's basically it sans something syndrome in there. Okay, but basically it's with consistent use of topical steroids, in particular topicals. Internal steroids do also have issues and contribute to this, but the issue is significantly more severe with topical steroids. Is that they tend to develop, they basically, exactly what you're saying, they destroy the immune system. So that as soon as you go off of the steroids, you get withdrawal symptoms from not having the steroids. And generally,
Absolutely.
those withdrawal symptoms from the topical steroids are more severe than the initial issue. And this
Absolutely.
can
I mean,
lead to like eczema and psoriasis over the entire body, including the face, which can destroy someone's life, and it can take 5 to 10 years to recover from something like this.
yeah, I mean, you're really speaking to it because I mean, I experienced seeing this happen to people, and I was also on heavy steroid treatments for lungs and things of that nature and skin, and had constant fungal infections, but I continued to, suffer from them. And then when I went off of steroids, of course, that had a magnificently um, debilitating effect on my immune system in its entirety. And, when we think about the skin, I think, it's like the vision is not broad enough. So when we talk about the skin in general, I think it's very important to remember that the skin is one of your main elimination organs. It's actually a
Yes.
kidney all over your body. So a lot of people don't really have that connected relationship with their skin, that like they think this is on the outside of their body and so they're protected from it. But anything you put on your skin is readily absorbed into your body. Then that's how we purge toxins when we sweat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way our bodies develop when we are just a very small number of cells in our mother's womb is that basically our outside, which is our skin, turns in on itself and becomes our digestive system. So our digestive system and our skin is exactly the same kind of tissue, and it does exactly the same kinds of things as each other. Anything that you're going to absorb through your digestive system, while a bit differently, you will still absorb it through your skin as well, and you get the good and the bad with that. I mean, you may not want to expose your stomach to pesticides that you're eating, but oh, you're fine doing it with your skin. No, it's exactly the same thing as eating them. It's just slightly different. Um,
Right.
well, I just want to go back. You did say that talking about the skin as an elimination organ, and I actually think most of what I think of as organs of elimination is where our good bacteria shows up. So if we think
Right.
about it, the places that I think of, we have our skin, then we also have our digestive tract, we have our urinary system, and then for individuals with uterus, the whole uterine system is another elimination method for toxins to get out of our body, and there's also a variety of bacteria there as well.
Right. No, that's so absolutely true. And I think, those are the areas of our bodies, that really are come to relevance about body flora. Because,
Hmm.
like I was saying, a lot of people have this, same as I did, relationship with like, oh, all bacteria is bad. But just like our urinary tract system, E. coli serves a purpose. There's even some, new studies out there talking about how the good bacteria actually carry nutrition to the cells. That they're transporters in these particular areas of the body. And that's why we have different, strains of bacteria in different areas of our body. So, and we have a lot more strands than people think. I mean, when I became a newbie to probiotics, I was like, well, what is 12 strands, 8 strains, 14 strains? There's so many different types, and they all serve a purpose for us.
I think that's one of the reasons that I like the concept of making probiotics myself rather than getting store-bought ones because I feel as though I'm going to get a broader spectrum rather than something that's made in a lab.
Yeah. You
But
cannot, in my opinion, you cannot beat getting all of the stuff that you need naturally occurring in a whole food diet.
mhm,
And
yep.
that is how our bodies are meant to assimilate nutrition. That's why people don't, and myself included, don't really tolerate supplementation well, because it's still foreign to the body.
And when I do recommend supplements to others, I try to get whole foods based vitamins to start out and things like that. Um, Mega Foods, for instance, that's the vitamin brand I recommend for most individuals. They're the kind of company that there's carrots that go into their store and then into their factories, and then the vitamins come out the other end. So like they use
Right,
the actual foods, and I think that's the way to go because they're able to concentrate it down, so we're just getting what we need.
right.
Um, but I did just want to mention because I realized I skipped over one of the other big elimination methods or detoxification systems in our body that also has flora is our lymphatic system.
Yeah. The
Uh,
amazing lymphatic system.
yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, the lymphatic system, when for me, I just see it all in the cycle and the circle. Of course, you know that I am working on recovering from some pretty serious stuff by way of detoxification and regeneration.
Mhm.
And it's been really difficult for me in that journey on something like trying to decide about probiotics because, of course, I've seen an immense amount of doctors, hundreds of doctors, and I've seen, you know, many naturopaths or natural practitioners,
You are currently the
various
only
different.
person in this conference.
Oh, you must have timed out. But so, trying to decide about probiotics has been pretty difficult. I'm just waiting for Jillian to come back online. So she may call me. But I'd be interested to find out what other people think about probiotics, because it's definitely an area of debate. So let me see here.
Sorry about that, Annabelle. Just so you know, I lost reception briefly. So I didn't catch most of what you just said, but I'm sure it was enlightening to someone.
Well, I was just saying, I'm pretty sure Jillian will call me or be right back. And I was talking about how I had struggled after seeing so many doctors and conventional doctors and homeopathic naturopath doctors trying to decide about something like supplementing with probiotics. And, the difficulty that I found in that was that it's very expensive and very difficult to try and identify what's happening to your body on an individual basis, meaning, what strain do you need to replenish? And
That's
what
why
strain
broad
is
spectrum is really the way to go for most individuals.
Yeah. Well, when I did use probiotics, I used broad spectrum, and it definitely makes a difference. But when I do get whole foods, and it just ups it even better. I mean, we did that talk about apples, and that's why I did that blog post on apples and apple pectin, because I love the modulating effect that it has. So there's this whole food, that's apple skin, from the core. There's the pectin, and that modulates our system instead of, putting in a certain amount of something. And I love that nature provides that in so many ways. I mean, elderberry is another wonderful, modulator, but we're talking about gut. I'm always amazed at the role of a balanced whole food diet and how that can just make such a difference. And then, like you were saying, making your own, ferments and kombucha, which you're experimenting on right now. Yep. And it will be very interesting to see, what comes about in the next week with that. So,
yeah, I think for me, what I think when it comes to food and supporting the bacteria and the bacteria of the whole body, I think that garlic is what I think is most beneficial for individuals. And this is really because, I mean, a lot of people think of garlic as an antibacterial. I mean, I definitely do. If someone is sick, the first thing I say is eat more garlic.
right.
But garlic also has inulin in it, and inulin is a prebiotic. So this is a food for the good bacteria. So even though garlic works to fight and kill off a lot of the bad bacteria, it also acts to encourage the growth of the good bacteria. So it is also a modulator, even though it works in a slightly different method than an average modulator of the body.
Right.
But that really, again, is mostly for digestive flora. I mean, with garlic, you can get some benefits to the urinary tract flora as well. But really, the thing that I think that best supports the entire body's flora is staying hydrated.
Absolutely.
Because you can't flush out stores of bacteria that's just fermenting bad foods in your digestive system without being hydrated. You can't get the lymph fluid to move through your body and get out unless you're properly hydrated. You can't have regular urinations unless you're properly hydrated to help flush out the bacteria of your urinary tract that may be causing urinary tract infections. You can't, women can't properly have good blood flow during their menses unless they're properly hydrated. Your skin can't be, your skin's only going to be inflamed and irritated and getting more infections unless you're properly hydrated. Hydration really hits all of these different areas, and it's so hard, especially in the winter months, to stay hydrated. And I think for everyone, we can all pay more attention to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, hydration is such a key point, and it's also about knowing um, if I mean, you can drink a ton of water, and if you're not absorbing correctly and utilizing, you can also be dehydrated on
Mm-hmm.
a cellular level.
Well,
So
at least if you're not absorbing it, it's going to help flush out your bowels still.
absolutely, absolutely. But it's really interesting because I never made that connection before. Like how important it is to make sure that I'm getting as much hydration as I can. So that talks about like the kind of water I'm drinking because when I first started drinking, trying to clean up the kind of water I drank, that
Mm-hmm.
was really confusing for me. Like, there's so many different waters on the market. Like, what is actually going to be the best for my body to absorb and actually work? And I didn't want to drink out of plastic, and so I started getting reverse osmosis water. But I wasn't, that was the same kind of concept. Reverse osmosis was taking everything out.
Yep.
So then I started putting things like lemon and infusing my water with lemon or even herbs. I mean, nettle is such an amazing herb for hydration, I think, because it's just jam-packed full of minerals
Minerals.
and
Yeah, really the best way to, if you're having a hard time absorbing water, you really have to add something to your water so that whether it be minerals or electrolytes, just something that your body can bind with the water to actually absorb through your digestive lining. For me, I tend to put salt into my water if I don't have anything else. Um, I mean, sugar works the same exact way, and you don't need a lot either. You can just a little tiny bit, especially with the salt. And well, sugar too, but
right.
all of those little things is, and it goes the same way with a lot of foods. People talk about absorbing foods better and medicinal herbs as well when you add some black pepper to it.
Mm.
Um, but this it's not just black pepper. It's anything that's mineral rich. So the nettles would be a good one. Alfalfa, parsley, basically any leafy fresh herbs are good ones.
Oh yeah, I love those. Yeah, those are just super hydrating and I didn't, understand the role that that could play for a while. And I used trace minerals, which, really
Mm-hmm.
made a huge difference in me being hydrated. But, learning those nice tricks of, hydrating the water with, or, sort of making your own alkaline water, so to speak. I started looking into that and using a lot of lemon, which really made a huge difference for me was just putting lemon into my water. Lots of it, of course, but you had just mentioned something and an electrolyte drink that I started making was lime and lemon and orange juice, and I would put some salt in it. And if I was really dehydrated, I would use lemon and honey and salt and make like a concentrated, electrolyte drink. And that really was awesome.
And you and I both know we're both into honey, but maple syrup as well, because I know you really like that as well, is another great electrolyte addition to drinks. And this is all just for different ways to absorb water more effectively. But it's really important to mention that there are also things that we could add to our water that make it harder to absorb the water.
Yeah, tell me what you're saying.
So the main thing that comes to my mind is tannins, which are high
Oh,
in tea and coffee.
right,
Um,
absolutely.
and I know so kombucha is a unique thing because kombucha is fermented tea. So you get the probiotic effects of the fermentation of the sugars, but then you also have the slight tanning effects of the tea. And I don't know if there's much of a difference in the tanning effects of kombucha versus normal green or black tea. But
Mm,
tannins, basically what they do is they take your digestive lining and they take the individual cells that normally have gaps between them for things to absorb through, and tannins will tan. So just the same way they tan a leather hide, the proteins of the individual cells bind together and form sort of say like a net, and nothing can get through. And so when that happens, you can't absorb water. And so that's the downside to having tea and coffee as a water source. And herbs are not immune to this. There are many, many medicinal herbs that are high in tannins. Generally, it's the herbs that are labeled as astringent herbs.
right.
And so the general thought is that for every cup of water that you have that has tannins in it, whether it be tea, coffee, or something else, you should have an additional cup of water that doesn't. So if you're normally drinking 8 cups of water a day, you have your 10th, so you have your 9th cup of coffee, so 1 cup of coffee making 9 cups. You then need to have another cup making 10 cups of fluid a day to get the normal water you need plus the additional to counter the coffee you had.
Yeah, that's so interesting you mentioned that because I was just reading something on H. pylori a little bit ago that's really, it's really that cycle you're talking about. When we harden that tissue, and we cannot absorb, hydration the way that we're supposed to, it definitely creates a domino effect inside of the body. So it's pretty interesting. I was looking into that as far as H. pylori is concerned, and the buildup of the ammonia and the carbon dioxide, the role of the bacteria in there getting into the mucus lining, and then a lot of anything that keeps that lining from being able to absorb. Of course, tannins is just one anti-nutrient out there. So I think, again, it goes back to that whole having balance and being mindful and conscientious of what we are taking in. Our culture does a lot of caffeine, a lot of tea, a lot of coffee, a lot of poorly processed foods that don't take into account that's being disrupted in that process. So it's I think it goes back to also when we talk about a whole foods diet and how really vital it is that we don't make up the primary part of our diet with processed foods. So, I mean, I would wonder, on body flora, how processed foods really impact it. So I would think pretty significantly.
My general understanding is that because so many processed foods basically aren't fresh, they have so many additives added to them. A lot of those additives, uh, as a secondary action, kill off some of the good bacteria. And then because there's so many preservatives added, the only bacteria remaining on the processed food tends to be the bad bacteria that has survived past the preservatives that have tried to kill them off. So those bad bacteria are what are there to colonize the digestive tract and the rest of the body.
Right. That goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that, especially the standard American diet,
Hmm.
whenever we're taking something like antibiotics, and then we're basically just replenishing our system with bad bacteria or things that generate bad bacteria. Um, so, and I was thinking about something when you mentioned tannins. you know, it's no secret that chronic fatigue is pretty much on an epidemic level in our culture, in our
Hmm.
society. And of course, I mean, I completely fall into this category. For years, the way that I dealt with that was by drinking lots of coffee or like lots of caffeinated tea because, I mean, I was just so exhausted. And I think that's really a common method that people use to deal with fatigue. And so it just, in my opinion, just makes that problem continue to grow and fester like a bad bacteria out of control.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think I told this story a week or two ago about my experience when I went out to Colorado and just being in a different altitude, being significantly more dehydrated than normal, and my sleep really suffering because of it, and feeling basically like I was waking up with a hangover because I wasn't hydrated enough. Because I was drinking what I normally did, but I was at a different altitude, so I needed more water than normal.
Right.
And through paying attention to that, and even since then, I really see how my fatigue levels are directly related to how much water I've been drinking. And when I get more water, I'm more awake, I am more aware, I'm more able to participate. My mental functions are much higher, and I really think hydration plays a huge part in that fatigue. And it's just this unfortunate cycle that people set themselves up in with having coffee and tea, and it accidentally dehydrating them and causing more fatigue at the same time.
Yeah, or even hydrating with something like Gatorade or some of those marketed, processed electrolyte drinks, you
Yeah,
know.
I think with a lot of those for me, my main issues come with the preservatives and the other additives. I personally don't see them reducing hydration. I do see them causing other issues, such as just the irritations due to the colorings and preservatives. But I don't, are you aware of some other particular thing that they, and I mean, they're pro-inflammatory sugars and things like that as well, of course, but
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. The additives, the coloring, the artificial dyes and stuff like that. But that's what I used to think about when I would think about hydration was, I would turn there instead of just grabbing a lemon and, putting lemon in my water or cutting down my coffee consumption or actually drinking water because I would say whenever I was primarily on that standard type diet we're talking about,
hmm.
I drank a lot of fluid, but a lot of it was not water. It was soda or, coffee or tea or something along those lines. Like there's definitely an argument to be said that, you know, just drinking real water
Yeah.
is
I remember
incredibly important.
when I was first starting to pay attention to my own health. So this was well before I started studying herbal medicine. But one of the first things I noticed was that I was spending a lot of money on liquids to drink. And now I don't drink alcohol, so the average college student is spending a lot of their money on alcohol. But I was buying fruit juices and um, not milk, but alternative milks and all these probably sodas as well, just all these different fluids, trying to stay hydrated and not really seeing that the impact they were having and that they were also dehydrating me at the same time while I was trying to hydrate myself because I was doing a lot of exercise then. So my focus was exercise and hydration, and then things came from that afterwards. But I think it really is hard to find good quality water.
It is. I mean, and so interesting. I can really relate to that. I used to spend a lot of money on fruit juices,
Hmm.
like orange juice and stuff like that because I was always thirsty. And well, now, I eat a lot of fruit and I get a lot of electrolytes because I have so much fruit in my diet. That's one of the
Hmm.
reasons that I eat a very um, high energy diet that's heavy on the fruit side. Of course, trying to recover from a really intensive level of cellular dehydration has been a part of my journey. So that's why I turned to that. And then I'm just looking back thinking, geez, no wonder I was buying juice all the time because a part of us, or a part of, what my experience was, is that I had that intuition, but I just couldn't slow down or quiet down enough or think clearly enough about something like, what I'm drinking and how it's affecting my body. So you
That's
were
one
on
of the
that
things
journey a lot longer before I was. And I know you've been really serious about it. Like you even made a calendar for drinking water.
I did. I believe that I did, but I don't remember doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
it was pretty cool. It really inspired me to pay more attention.
um, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh,
Sorry, the
it'll come
calendar
back to
for
me.
you.
Um, so we've got about 10 minutes left, Annabelle. Were there any big tips that you think you have to share with others about maintaining healthy body flora rather than
Really,
preventing bad flora, but more promoting healthy flora?
really, it always comes back to balance. Like having a balanced diet, having balance with, even when we talk about tannins. I love chicory. I love having a chicory rich tea, but I know it's really high in tannins. So I don't have it all the time, and I don't have lots of it, and for me, the thing that I have found um, the most that resonates with me the most when it comes to my own personal wellness is learning balance.
Yeah, one of my big proponents when I'm talking about wellness is to make sure that someone's paying attention to their own body, and it's very hard to start learning to do that. And I think this may be the calendar thing you were talking about writing everything down. I mean, it can become addicting to do that for some, but starting to write things down, pay attention to how you feel, even what you're thinking, because things can affect your mental health just as much as your physical health. And knowing what you're eating, how much you're drinking, exercising, sleeping, all of those things, and how all of the different areas of your body are feeling in relation to those, it takes a long time to start to see the patterns that are unique to you. And we all have our own patterns because we are all different. So
Right.
while uh, while we were talking about water a lot in this, um, not everyone needs 8 cups of water a day. That's just considered to be the standard recommendation. But some people do fine on 6. But the point is, try it and see how you feel. Try way more and see how you feel. Try way less and see how, maybe don't try way less, but try different kinds of probiotics. Try supplements. Uh, try making your own probiotics and prebiotics at home and see how your body feels with them. And a lot of these things you can't do for just a week to see how you feel, because change takes time. I mean, this is something you and I were talking about, Annabelle, when we were talking about me being vegan for a month. And you mentioned that for every year you have been having dairy, it takes a month to detoxify from it. And I think that's a really valuable ratio. Um, but it's also really daunting. So paying attention to your body and knowing how you feel when you don't have something, and then seeing how you feel again when you do have a food or something, and then empowering yourself to make the choice to have a food or not have a food, I think is the real thing. So paying attention to your body and then empowering yourself to make a choice whether you want to feel like that or you don't want to feel like that.
Yeah, those are really good points. Experimentation and empower yourself, because nobody knows your body like you do, but you know as well as I do, life gets really busy,
It
and
does.
it's hard, to keep the focus. So doing something like keeping a log of stuff really has been invaluable for me, you know. And I don't have to do it the same with the same thing all the time, meaning there's certain areas where I struggle with balance. But once I've learned the balance, I've learned that and I can move on to another area. You know what I mean? So it can always be evolving as you're going, and that's the way it goes. I mean, we've been doing this for many years now, and it's an art that has to be learned, And gut flora, body flora, it's like the ocean, I mean, just there's so many amazing things that we're starting to learn about the role of flora inside of our body that modern medicine and science did not know, um, back whenever allopathy was first being formed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love experimenting, that. So
Now, are there any things that you particularly do to support your own body flora right now?
well, for right now, I do a lot of detoxifying as far as detox baths, and I do a lot of hydration, which for me right now is really heavy ended on the fruit and fluids.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my primary focus right now, which of course will be shifting. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm at. What about you?
Well, I've been trying all of the different probiotic foods. That's been the new thing I've been trying. Now, in general, I'm very turned off by the fermented smell. So that itself seems to turn my stomach a little bit. But I'm slowly trying new foods with that. But really, hydration is just my key thing. And for myself, around hydration right now, um, I've definitely for a while now been really into carbonating my water, because the texture really helps me to drink it when I'm more dehydrated. But I've been finding I've been buying more and more carbonated mineral water, and I'm starting to wonder if it's actually the mineral water that I want not the carbonation. So this is something new that I'm going to be paying attention to see if my water is basically just lacking minerals, and if that's going to make any changes to my own hydration level, my energy levels, etc.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's something we could definitely go into. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, we are next week going to be talking all about healthy bowel movements, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about gut flora then. But I think we've come to a close today, Annabelle. Any final words?
No, just be well, take good care, and I'll look forward to catching up next week.
Yes, remember, everybody stay hydrated this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.